The most frightening feature of the book of Revelation is how much power God allows evil. And I want to know, why must God put the devil on such a long leash? So said a pastor recently in the UK. Now, that's a very abstract reaction if you're in a safe place where there's peace, stability, and a certain amount of freedom and prosperity. But if you're living in a nightmare, as many Christians are, whether in a totalitarian regime or a dreadful war or besieged by religious extremists, it's a very real and painful question. And I read the book of Revelation most memorably while making a visit to North Korea many years ago. Unfortunately, it hasn't changed much since. After getting off the plane in Pyongyang, the guide came forward and said to us, "Welcome to heaven. You are now in the earthly paradise of our great leader Kim Il-sung. Come and see our paradise." Well, we were whisked off to the Grand Opera. The play was written by Kim Il-sung. It was about Kim Il-sung, and the plot was how Kim Il-sung will save the world, if only the world would realize. Some of the choruses were projected to the side of the stage in English, and one said, "Kim Il-sung gives eternal life to the Korean people." Eternal life from a communist ruler? That's odd. Why all this need for worship? And of course, there's a vicious flip side to that. You're not allowed to worship anyone else in North Korea. The whole society is set up to worship the dynasty of Kim Il-sung. It's the most religious society in the world, with over 20 million people trapped into a grim worship vortex from which there's little chance of escape. And I was reading Revelation 13 at the time, and it described North Korea far too accurately for comfort. And of course, the worst of it all is that in the middle of this, God's people are dying. Verse 7, "The beast was given power to make war against the saints and to kill them." We think there may be between 200,000 and 400,000 Christians in North Korea, and over 50,000 of them live in labor camps of such atrocious conditions they're comparable to Auschwitz. Yes, the saints are dying in North Korea, and God doesn't seem to be putting a stop to it. And that's the terrifying thing. Oh, I was angry at Kim. What a nightmare. 20 million people trapped in his personal fantasy. They have no choices. They must obey. They must worship or go to a gulag and die. He has made them less than human. How dare he? So I went back to Revelation 13. And then I read this verse that made me physically sick. Look at the language. Verse 5, "The beast was given a month to utter blasphemies and to exercise authority." Verse 7, "The beast was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them." Verse 7 again, "He was given authority." Who is giving the beast this power? God is. My God is sovereign. Do I really believe that he has the power to take Kim Il-sung's breath away? Well, yes, of course he has the power. But why doesn't he? I'm sure it isn't because Christians haven't asked him to. If you really believe God is absolutely sovereign, you have to face up to this awful fact. It's God that gives the beast all this power. So there you are. The message of Revelation is that God may put evil on a chain, but it's rather a long chain. It's Christians to the lions, and the lions, for the moment, seem to be winning. Where's the hope? I got quite depressed returning from North Korea. If I was God, I would rescue those people. And now we know that about 2 to 3 million people died from a terrible and very avoidable famine in the late 90s. And still, Kim's descendants spend vast amounts of money on more monuments to deify their absurd personality cult, while the people struggle to put a little meat into their rice bowls. Where's the hope? As you keep reading these visions, it comes through. But you have to keep your eye on the Lamb. In the final chapters of Revelation, there is a cast of characters: beasts, dragons, and the Lamb. If we look too much at the beast, we get depressed. If we fix our eyes on the Lamb, we get strength. For one thing, the Lamb knows completely. I remember a Christian who was jailed and subjected to what he called re-education camp. And he thought he was going mad from all the pressure. And one day, he remembered John's vision of the Lamb. And he said, I knew it wasn't me that was crazy. It was the world that was crazy. And strangely, that restored my spiritual sanity. It sounds odd, but when you see the world around you so well described in its deepest form, it brings a deep and even unconscious relief. In North Korea, I could see the whole society described perfectly by Revelation 13. If God knows all this, then He's still sorting it all out. The passage described, for example, Kim's seeming impregnability. Verse 4, who is like the beast? Who can make war against him? Kim has total power. There's no possibility of revolt. You can't listen to a foreign radio to get the idea that all may not be perfect. The radios just have an on-off switch, no turning dial, which is always preset to the official channel. The passage also describes perfectly His total dominance over every single person. You can't opt out here. Everyone has to pay Him homage or die. Verse 16, the beast forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, to receive a mark on his right hand and on his forehead. Your right hand, what we work with. Your forehead, what we think with. So the beasts have complete control over not just what we do, but what we think. Everyone learns songs of Kim at school. They say grace to him. Their year is organized around his life. In each town, there are vast bronze statues of him to which you bring gifts. People get put into jail for inadvertently standing on a newspaper with his portrait. The Kims are beasts. They have fallen short. 666 is all they get on their report card. So I suppose I had gained a vital insight into the book of Revelation. It wasn't just a description of the way the world will end. It was a superb symbolic description of the way the world still is now. This fitted the nightmare of North Korea. And yet, once the situation has been named, it becomes understood and less of a threat. But then secondly, the Lamb wins eventually. We're in a section of the book of Revelation, call it the book of the heavens, that runs from chapter 12 to 22. And it starts with these three main figures, a dragon, the beast, and the lamb. And it goes on to tell us what the dragon and beasts have built. It's all falling down. And it ends with a new heavens and a new earth. And in the book, through all the symbols, John is predicting the fall of the Roman Empire, so that you couldn't look at all the grand symbols of this proud empire without seeing its end, its weakness, its impermanence. It's like getting new eyes in North Korea, so that those huge golden statues that everyone has to bow down in front of, you look at them differently now. You no longer see a strong, eternal figure, but a pompous beast that is soon to die. A lamb will see to it. The world is not at the mercy of beasts or dragons, dictators, tycoons, or terrorists. Yes, they can wreak havoc, but they cannot bring about the end. Their powers are limited, and God restrains it. You notice throughout the visions that the evil beings only have power to destroy a third of the earth, or For a month they were allowed victory, but it is all happening within an eternal purpose. There is a power center no one can touch, and it all gets folded into a purpose for good. It's not easy to see, though. And how often is that the story of the persecuted church? The beast wins for a time, but then only to realize that they have lost instead. That's where the hope comes from. But then this creates another spiritual crisis of a sort, because who wants to follow a God who works like this? And so we find a further comfort. The Lamb waits generously. Why does the Lamb wait? Out of love, so that others may come in. It is grace that stays the judgment hand. Waiting gives us space to pray for the salvation of, say, Kim Jong-un, for example. It gives us another opportunity to do the most eternally significant thing of all, to love and pray for our enemies, and so become more like our God. This is our God, not willing that any should perish, but all have everlasting life. It has been well said that there are two evangelizing dynamics in the Bible. The dynamic of go, that's Matthew 28. We go and make disciples. But there is also the dynamic of wait. That's John 13. No one comes to the Father except the Father draws him. Jesus spent most of his life waiting, the silent years, trusting that God's promises will come to him. So with us. Yes, we go, but we also celebrate waiting. God is bringing the world to us in all its need, and we become his agents of grace because he is granting it all more time. He is staying his hand of judgment. And when we realize how generous our God is to wait this long, we feel joy because he waited for us in the same way. So God delays judgment even on the evildoers so that they can get another chance. Not only does he take their work and turn it to good, he waits for them to turn to him. And that puts a whole different complexion on it. God isn't this person who takes some kind of sadistic pleasure in our deaths. As we suffer, he gives us the joy of closeness. It's grace. And as we wait, we realize more and more how merciful he is. And so we lose our fear of God's will. There was a famous Christian saint called Lady Julian, and she had a prayer, ran like this: I ask this without condition, Father. Do what I ask and send me the bill. Anything that it costs will be all right with me. That's quite a prayer. But then she adds, in this love without beginning he made us. In the same love he protects us and never allows us to be hurt in a way which would lessen our joy. God never allows us to be hurt in a way which would lessen our joy. That's why we need a book like Revelation to show us how. Out of the Bible's most terrifying book comes all this gentle comfort. The Lamb brings it. The Lamb knows completely. The Lamb wins eventually. The Lamb waits generously.